Hi, I'm Dan. Thanks for checking in on Dimgaard. So this past Monday, it was a battle session, right? Like it was a you had a group of human Marines landing intent on eliminating this island of lizard folk, kind of a genocide situation there. So coming out of that, I had some thoughts that sparked. They're all related to the idea of a battle session. So the first one is that battle sessions are battle episodes or battle adventures or whatever you want to call them. They're not really my favorite because when you're actually in the heat of battle, there's not a lot of role playing, right? I mean, you can role play the type of character what your character would do in battle, but I mean, there's not a lot of discussion going on, right? It's like we're fighting them, and so it ends up being very combat centric just by the nature of the episode. And you know, like depending upon how it's staged, DM can weave in some interesting character interactions, and we'll get to that in a second. But really, I started to say battle interactives because during 3.5, an interactive would be like at a convention where players from all different parts of the country. You'd have like maybe several hundred D&D players coming together, and you're all wanting to play one adventure together, right? The hire several hundred. So you say, hey, how do we do that? And so one of the real widely used structures was a battle. It's like, oh, okay, we've gotten all of our forces together and we're going to go to battle for this purpose, right? And those were called interactives. They were all of them were called interactives. But then if it was an interactive that was particularly focused on a particular battle, it was called a battle interactive. And then we see that tradition carried all the way through to currently in 5th edition. A lot of the convention special type things are battle stages, battle episodes. But battles adventures are one of the fundamental types of D&D adventures, and it's been that way forever. And if you're publishing a long-standing campaign, I mean, you could have 40 episodes where you never include a battle interactive or a battle episode, or 40 episodes where you never have a hex exploration episode, which is another one of the fundamental ones, or an investigative episode, or a dungeon crawl, or I mean, there are like 9 or 10, I don't know, I forget how many, but they're like very well established adventure patterns, and it's not incumbent upon you to put in a full length campaign, the type that we put in Dimgaard, every single type of those archetypes, but we do try to put as much variety in there as we want, right? We don't want 40 episodes of just cookie cuttering the same pattern over and over again. So we try to mix in a group of hex crawls, a group of dungeon crawls, a group of battle episodes, a group of investigative episodes, a group of diplomatic excursions, so that over the course of that 40 episodes, the DM and players have a wide variety of experiences and hopefully come out of it really understanding the full breadth of what D&D can offer. But still, of the different archetypes, battle interactives are on the low list for me because there's not a lot of creativity usually involved in them. They're when you get up to higher levels, so players or characters have all sorts of different resources, and they can use them in different ways. But they really are just very direct. There's usually not a lot of subtlety to them. And so that's just the nature of the beast there. And we saw that Monday night. But it also made me think that there has been for as long as there's been D&D, it's been a challenge of how to handle mass combat, like where you have dozens or hundreds or even thousands of combatants in a battle, because you can't go into initiative and roll individual attacks for that many creatures each turn. So you've got to abstract it out away from the individual character level and into a time frame that's not 6-second intervals, the way that initiative normally is in D&D. And then like there have been entire resources, like entire additional books. Like there was one called Mass Combat or Mass Campaigns or something like that back in 3.5, and it was a full 250-page book on how to handle mass combat situations. And then in 5th edition, there have been a couple of attempts. They've never really made it into print, but they've been published as Urnoth Arcana on proposals on what to do with mass combat, and none of them have been very well received. I even incorporated one of them in one of my earlier adventures. I think maybe even in one episode of the original Drow Conspiracy, it was an alternative. It was an alternative path through an episode there. Yeah, and it, just like I said, they were just not well received. And what that goes back to, like at the baseline of that, is D&D. What D&D came from was tabletop miniature battles. There were a variety of systems, kind of like Warhammer is today, where people would have their medieval pewter figures, painted figures, and then there would be rules for how to maneuver them on the tabletop. And there were clubs around that. I mean, they weren't popular. It wasn't like they had, like I think in the Geneva, Wisconsin area, which was where Gygax and Aronson started. It seems to me, if I remember right, their chainmail club, which is what that system they used for their miniatures battles, I think it had like 12 members, right? And that might have been like the most that they ever had. So and then what D&D came from was that Gygax and Aronson said, what would be really cool would be if week to week, instead of just unpacking our armies and going to battle here, if we had a hero on each side that had special traits and a story, and we could like really identify with that, and that escalated up into becoming characters for Dungeons and Dragons. But because it came out of that tabletop miniatures combat system, from the very beginning, a lot of the storylines revolved around heroes who were involved in wars, and then that naturally leads to then their participation in a large battle. And then how do you manage that in a role-playing environment? And there's just never been a really perfect solution to that. And I don't propose to have the perfect solution to that. But I'll tell you what I use. I'll tell you what we have settled into in Dimgaard, and don't see it changing until we see something that looks really, really good, that convinces us to go a different way. And that is we will typically have like a set piece encounter, like where the PCs or the heroes, they form like a squad, a group within the army. And there's a set piece encounter where PCs meet a similar element on the other side, and you have your standard combat, standard D&D combat, and then almost always we transition into a skills challenge, right, where we say, okay, this battle is going to go for hours, and so we're going to split this up into rounds roughly about 1 hour, and then you describe what your character is going to do to help your side win this battle. And that could be just as simple as, hey, I'm going to try to kill as many of the enemy as I want to, right? And then you just say, okay, well, then your skill challenge will just be your attack roll. Or it could be, well, I know I'm going to use my leadership to inspire my side. And then you say, okay, yeah. And then, make like a performance check or charisma, or I mean, a persuasion check, maybe even an intimidation check, depending upon how the player stages it. And then what that allows us to do is it allows us to take it away from just a wholesale combat situation, to really kind of leverage the strengths and examine the abilities of the individual PCs involved. I really like that. There's very often, for players who are new to Dimgaard, at least new to my version of Dimgaard, kind of a not really confusion, but it's like, oh, so you mean we're in all this combat, but we're not going to go into combat. And so there's like a moment of disjoint understanding there, and I try to explain, it's like, well, we're narrating the combat where we're still in combat, but we're not, but our die rolls are not really dictated by attack rolls and damage. We're doing something, we could be doing something different with that. Anyway, and then and so that also pulls the combat apart, right, and allows us to weave in, like so let's say that you're going to have, say, 3 rounds of the skill challenge. You can inject in between those rounds more flavorful encounters than just line them up and roll the dice, right? There could be, you could say, okay, after turn 1 and before the second turn of the skills challenge, one of your group is captured, or one of the generals of your side is captured, and the PCs have an opportunity to have a very focused rescue of that, right? And or like in the first Drow Conspiracy published, well, it's also in this one too, there is an episode that starts out as a whole scale combat, and the good guys are losing, and there's just no way to turn it around. The circumstances are just so severe that there's just, and so after that initial skills challenge up front, it turns into, okay, your side is in flight, and how do you keep them from just being cut down by the enemies, right? And so it sets up a series of like very directed encounters that allows for more subtlety and complexity than just lining them up and rolling the dice. Yeah, so that's how we present battle episodes in Dimgaard now. We will typically have an opening encounter, a skills challenge that will, and then either interweave woven into the skills challenge, or after the skills challenge, there will be some more poignant directed encounters that allows us to get more into the role-playing elements, right? Like it could be like, what are you going to do with the captives, right? Like your side is one. Now you've got a group of captives. What are you going to do about that? You just going to enslave them, going to kill them, going to ransom them? What is it you're going to do? I think it just leads to all sorts of interesting situations, encounters that occur outside just the real grisly hard. So the combat, the battle forms a backdrop rather than being the engulfing element of the adventure, of the episode. So that's what I came away with this week from the new campaign. And as always, these opinions are mine, and I don't purport to be infallible. You may have a good foundation for a different opinion. You may say, no, battle episodes should be the top of your list of type of, and here's why battle episodes are so great, blah blah blah. Right? If you have a cogent argument, I am ready to have my mind changed. Please reach out and connect with me. I put my contact information on the different social media channels on each of these now. And likewise, if you agree with me, please feel encouraged to confirm that. If you find these videos helpful, I come out with one each week. Please hit the like button so that the algorithm picks it up, gets it seen by more people. Subscribe so that you don't miss any of them. And thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.